Hello there, and welcome to Fixing the Sequel Trilogy, the Writers' Room podcast dedicated to fixing the Star Wars sequels. I'm Bryce Quinn, and this week I'm joined by Cole, our new full-time host.
Oh yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. It's been a crazy few weeks, and we've had you on a lot, so thank you very much. We appreciate you jumping on the show. We're also joined by Sandro. I don't know how to read Karayan. How are you doing, Sandro?
I don't know how to read, and I'm doing pretty good, yeah.
So this is Fixing the Sequel Trilogy, and today was supposed to be a big writer's room. But what is that they say about best laid plans? They're shit, and they're doomed to fail. So instead, we're going to stick to what we do best, which is ripping into the sequel trilogy. This week's target is Droids. As for progress, we're still working hard on early draft treatments and such, so let us get back to you on all that. It was supposed to be today, we're supposed to make a lot of progress today, but unfortunately, plans changed, and now we're here talking about droids. So, droids play an interesting role in the Star Wars universe, often as physical plot devices and receptacles for information. They're also side characters and companions to our heroes, helping them on their adventures. Today, we'll be diving into the good, the bad, and the ugly droids of the sequels, as well as what will be changing in our own version of the story. But before all of that, Cole, I believe you have a rant of some kind for us today. Some kind of hot take or opinion.
I would like to firstly say that last episode, was it last episode?
Yes, it was last episode, yeah.
I may have come out very strongly and made a
very strong
assertion that droids are world-breaking to the world building of Star Wars. Now, I know in my heart that this is something I at least did firmly believe, and I do have strong opinions. I just don't remember them at all. So, I think using great detective skills, I can backtrack. I think what my argument was, we have droids, cheap labor,
yes,
who have the ability to pretty much do the same jobs as any human, and we see them in very little capacity, like on the scale that they should be, right? Thematically, this works, but I feel like, one, slavery kind of is made redundant by droids, because slaves, they have all the problems that mortals do.
You need to feed them and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. The upkeep, whereas droids, they literally work 24 hours. They can be manufactured cheaply. Also, there's so many, shops and retail places and
just manual labor.
Exactly, right.
The workforce.
Yeah, droids are underrepresented in the economy.
Right.
I think that's my argument.
Okay. And that breaks the world building of Star Wars.
I do think it does.
Alrighty. Let's dive into that.
Yeah.
So, firstly, let's just address.
Yes.
So, obviously, Star Wars is a space fantasy. None of it's real, and it's not really every time they try and make something consistent in the lore, it just is it's something written in a book that retroactively changes the shielding on the Radis to make it fucking do a hyperspace jump kind of stuff. So obviously, none of that really works. But
yeah, no, I agree.
Outside of that, it's interesting, bringing up the point of, are they cheap? Let's talk about the droids in the prequel era. Are they cheaply manufactured?
Actually, one argument that's made. Well, the CIS does manufacture droids because it's cheap for them to do it. But I remember reading recently, I think it was very hard to upkeep them for military, at least.
Yeah, military stuff would be a lot expensive.
The mass production of droids is something that is incredibly costly. So doing that on such a wide a galaxy-wide scale, is where you get into the point of it's not actually as accessible as I think you're letting it on to be. There's a reason we see so many repurposed battle droids post the Clone Wars, is because there's just this abundance of droids that you can then just use, and that's why
they've already been made. You don't have to pay for it. Yeah.
Recoded them, and
I think though what's so expensive about having them for the military is that they're not really creating profit, right? Because it's private government stuff, and when they're fighting the war, they're kind of an expense fully. But in the workforce, they're always bringing in productivity and income and profit. So I think that's my contention. Because I know as well, some people bring up the argument that droids should be used in the military more, and I kind of don't agree on that because, one, it's more costly that way, and secondly, in the case of the Empire, it's after the Clone Wars, there is a taboo around droids.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
So that's something I was thinking about too. So in A New Hope, I remember there's the bar, and they're I can't have droids in here.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there some kind of lore stuff that I don't know about? Is it just a holdover from the Clone Wars where people don't trust or like droids, or what is that? What's all that about?
To my understanding, it is very much a holdover. You just had this great period where droids controlled by big factions were destroying cities, occupying towns, killing people, and it's a holdover from that. There's still a great feeling of prejudice and distrust around the idea of droids being around.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I never really put those two ideas together.
That's the way it seemed to me.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense. Interesting. Well, thanks for the hot take, Cole.
Okay. I promise I used to have more.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting take. It's something to think about. But I think we can dive into the sequel droids and what went wrong with those, because I think a lot of moments in the sequels that involve droids and like the droids as they are, their characters and the way they're involved in the story, I think was a bit of a letdown. So I want to start off with C-3PO, unless you guys want to start off anywhere else.
If we're doing what went wrong,
Yeah.
Okay, let's just start off with C3PO.
All right.
Sure thing.
So I want to start off with C-3PO. And Cole, this is going to be our returning segment of You Haven't Seen Rise of Skywalker.
I know.
But in The Rise of Skywalker, I'm sure you're familiar, C-3PO becomes a Sith droid.
Yeah.
As
I know of this.
He has to be reprogrammed so that he can translate from Sith.
By the one and only Babu Frick.
That's right, baby. Babu Freak. Yeah, so that's the scene in Rise of Skywalker. One of the many, many scenes that sucks ass.
Was it stupid? Yes. Did it introduce us to the best character of all time? Yes.
This is true. But it is also a fake out death. Because they're like, oh, C-3PO's going to die. And then he doesn't.
Lose him. And then, like, R2 has, like, a backup of his memory banks, so
yeah,
he just, like, reprograms him, basically.
Yeah, and I think it's one of 3 fake out deaths we get.
Yeah.
We get Chewie.
Yeah.
We
I
get
know that one.
C-3PO, and I also believe we get Ben when he
Ben.
gets stabbed.
Yeah.
And then she heals him.
Or we get Ben thrown off the fucking cliff.
And when is he thrown off the cliff?
He gets thrown off the,
yeah.
the side.
And then he dies after that. So that's like 4 fake out deaths. Anyway, fucking dumbass movie.
Yes, I do know about the fake out deaths.
Yes, and you also know about C-3PO's red eyes and how cool he looked when he was translating from Sith. So that moment sucks, and I hate it. He also has a red arm. Dumb.
Yes, I agree with that fully.
I don't hate it. I don't see the point. He has a silver leg in the original movies.
Yeah.
He's not all gold.
Man,
And you know what they didn't do in the original movies? Draw attention to it. Just shut up.
Yeah, honestly, like I love the whole
Do they draw attention to it?
In the movie, yeah. He's like, oh, you must be looking at my red arm. Yeah,
They
there's a whole
do,
line. There's a
yeah.
whole line in Force
Okay, that
Awakens.
is silly.
Yeah.
But he could just have a red arm.
Oh, yeah, he could.
Yeah.
But it was more than that. And it's one of those tiny nitpick things. I'm not really mad. It's more just the overall, like, how, like, frustrated I get with Force Awakens, and that's just, like, one of the tiny...
Look how I'm different kind of thing.
Yeah, oh, look, you might be noticing my red arm. Like, yeah,
On
shut up.
action figures.
And then, yeah, it's on action figures. It's, like, it changes the action. It's like, oh, C-3PO's red arm version from the sequel trilogy. And there's, like, a comic tie-in I think they did to explain the backstory of that fucking red arm. So, I don't know. I just gripe with it for some reason. Anyone else got any hot takes for me?
No, I just want to say BB-8 is cool, and I like that they did BB-8 practically.
That's my exact point for BB-8.
Yeah. Like, are we getting into stuff we like? Because I think
We can right now. BB-8, this droid rules. I can think of no moment where I didn't like him.
I
fucking
love
him.
BB-8. I think since, like, quite early on, I've always said, like, I really want to keep in the thing where, like, he'll do something, and then he does, like, the thumbs up with the lighter.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Oh, my God. It's so funny.
Just
It's
a
so
fucking
cute.
great moment, yeah.
He's a great droid, and it's, like, it's such an amusing concept.
Yeah.
Like, seeing, like, this little soccer ball.
This
like-
little ball
Yeah.
rolling around. It's just satisfying to watch.
Yeah,
Great.
it's a great time. Where I think we saw a big problem with droids was the fact that a lot of the humor, I think, in Star Wars came from droids.
Yeah.
In the original trilogy, and even in the sequels. Sorry, the prequels. Even though I know you hate this,
Yeah.
I know I'm gonna bring up a moment. Me and Bryce were watching Attack of the Clones
Okay.
one day, and Bryce hates it, and I was just laughing my ass off because I love it so much when C-3PO like switches bodies with a super battle with a battle droid.
It's so stupid.
And his head goes on a battle droid, and then the battle droid's head goes on
Yeah.
C-3PO's body.
It's so fucking dumb.
Fucking hilarious.
It's like the most child comedy kind
Yeah.
of shit. I just don't like it. It's not funny.
I can't remember the line, but there's one really like he makes like puns as it's happening, and it's so funny.
No, it's horrible. I hate that scene so much.
I love it.
And also the other scene where they're in like the droid factory,
Yeah.
and, like stamped and stuff, and it's C-3PO and R2-D2, you know, on the conveyor belts and stuff, and C-3PO is spouting off nonsense. Dude, I really
it's like-
hate C-3PO.
It's like that, and it's but like you're kind of like meant to hate him because he's just like he's like a stickler to the rules kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like he's the straight cop, and R2's like the
Psychopath.
loose cannon. Like
It's just childish comedy to me. It's like C-3PO is the straight cop, like you said, and R2-D2 is like the loose cannon. But C-3PO is also really annoying, and he annoys all the characters in the story. And Han Solo yelling at C-3PO is hilarious.
Yeah, it's
C-3PO
funny.
annoying Han is not funny.
no, it's a part of his charm. It so is. Like I'd love to
I
see
gotta
a
agree,
scene
Sandro.
where
Okay.
Leia reunites with Han and C-3PO's there, and like Han just gets pissed, like, oh, fuck, you brought this fucking rust bucket back over here.
I will say that is very funny. Like that specific moment in Force Awakens, I could totally see us like recreating that moment in our rewrite, just because like, you know, it's him and Leia, they reunite, yeah, and then out of frame, literally like C-3PO pops his head and like, hello, it's been a while. Very funny. Like that rules. I think it's good.
It's just like 80-year-old Harrison Ford, like, I'm too old for this shit.
Oh, this fucking droid's still alive. Are you kidding me? Yeah.
But like, and then in the original trilogy, like the threat of the trash compactor balanced out with the comedy of C-3PO and R2. Like, no, you're meant to do the controls this way, and R2's just like, doo, 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 doo. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do like an actual criticism. Unless any notes from you, Cole, about
No,
C-3PO?
I don't think so. No.
So one of the things with the sequels is like R2D2 I actually love a lot. I think he's fantastic in the originals and the prequels. You know, I'm a bit neutral on the grease fire thing that he does in Revenge of the Sith. I know that's a little bit controversial for some reason.
Is it?
Yeah.
Because it's like, why didn't he do that in the original movies, like the original trilogy?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because they retroactively changed it so
That's
that he had
true,
like
yeah.
jet powers and he could fly and shit.
Yeah, they did kind of make him very powerful.
They did.
Yeah.
He's a killer.
And then the original trilogy, he's just like rolling around real slowly and just like yelling at people.
Does.
I imagine him saying the most profane things when he is like beeping.
I think it's always canonically the most profane. Like, it's
so funny.
It's
to me.
not, but like you hear the stories of how the actor was on set.
Yeah,
And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, it's so clearly like profane.
that's
things.
that's my headcanon. That's what I believe.
It's so
Yeah.
easy of a headcanon to like just lock into, and it just feels so right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So because of that, I love R2. I think he's hilarious, and I think he's just like a really good companion kind of character, and he adds a lot to the plot in terms of like what his role is as an
Yeah.
astromech. The idea of an astromech that's like he has like a pilot helper droid
Mm.
that sits in, and it's just such a unique visual to Star Wars. I think that's really cool, and R2D2
Yeah.
kind of pioneered that. I think the first time they did that was Empire Strikes Back, right? Is when they had him as the astromech in the X-wing for Luke.
No,
he was in.
He's in
episode
New
4,
Hope.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, he's in A New Hope, but does he
Yeah.
have the role
He's
of like?
in the. Yeah, because doesn't he like get shot?
He's in the
By Vader.
X-wing, yeah.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
cool.
Because he's meant to operate the targeting system that shoots the torpedo down into the Death Star, but like he gets
Gotcha.
shot out. And he's,
Gotcha,
like,
and
having,
Luke
like,
has
a
to-
malfunction. and
Gotcha.
Luke has to do it
Mm.
himself.
No, that's amazing. It's so crazy that George Lucas had that from like the very first movie
Yeah.
because it's such
Crazy man.
it's such an iconic visual and just a unique idea to have a human pilot and then a droid
Assisted
helper
by a droid,
bot
yeah.
that
Yeah.
sits in the
It's like a
side seat.
co-pilot.
Yeah, like a
Yeah,
co-pilot.
yeah.
It's really unique. It's really cool. And I think R2's there's my rant about R2D2. I think he's really cool.
Yes.
But in the sequels, I feel like they kind of just wasted him. I feel like he wasn't around enough.
But we
Yes.
have BB-8.
We have BB-8, yes, but R2D2 is this really interesting like legacy character,
Yeah.
and his connection to Luke, and his connection to maybe even Ben Solo,
It's the
who maybe-
Skywalkers.
to the Skywalkers in
Yeah.
general, and he maybe like grew up with Ben Solo
Mm.
at the Jedi Temple and stuff, and that's something I wanted to explore a bit more.
Yeah.
I guess when we have this, he is our legacy character. We love him, but like it's the new movies, it's the new sequels,
and you
know?
want the new characters, yeah.
And you want the
That's
new
true, yeah.
characters, and like BB-8's that new character. Like we could just get rid of BB-8 and keep R2 as like
Mm.
the quintessential droid of
Yeah.
droids.
Yeah,
Well,
The king.
the King droid.
yeah, I would like to add on that though. Like what's really interesting about the droids is they're kind of the only characters who see everything in Star Wars, because that's prequels, original trilogy, R2D2 always there, sees the whole thing. Watched bloody Anakin kill younglings.
Oh,
Let's
God,
talk about
yeah.
that.
Jesus, was he
Um,
there for that moment?
I'm pretty sure was he
I don't think
he there?
in the Jedi Temple,
He was brought there though.
but he was probably on the ship.
Yeah, he's a witness.
Oh, so he was on the ship that Anakin was flying around.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Never
Um,
thought about that.
He's on the ship that Anakin flies around to. No, he doesn't go to. He doesn't become the. I can't remember. I'm
Mm.
trying to reimagine the scene where he leaves the Jedi Temple to go to the Chancellor's office. Can't remember. Anyway,
Someone will
but
tell us.
he is there for the whole thing. Not only this, C-3PO is also in the know, but
Yeah.
he canonically gets his memory
Right,
erased
right.
at the end of Revenge of the Sith. But R2
Yeah.
does not.
No.
Okay.
So he knows everything.
He knows
Yeah.
everything. Yeah, he's got this like years and years and years of memories of like this wild period of war and all of these like war stories.
And then he
Yeah.
ends up with Luke, the son.
Of Anakin.
And then he's like, I'm looking for Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan's like, never seen this guy in my life.
Which is, one of the silliest plot holes that,
Mm.
the prequels kind of retroactively
Yeah.
created that plot hole. And it's like, it's silly, but what are you
Mm.
going to do?
I don't remember owning a droid. Yeah, but come on, dude.
It's R2D2, dude. Like,
Yeah.
he was there the whole time. Everyone knows this droid. Anyway. it's
Obi-Wan
like-
doesn't remember owning a droid because every astromech he's ever had has fucking died.
Which is very funny. The idea that he's like got no connection, like emotional connection to droids.
it's
is
like
really funny.
Roach in The Witcher.
Yeah. Yeah, you
I just get a new roach.
I just get a new roach.
I get a new R4.
So yeah, my problems with R2, he's asleep all through Force Awakens until right at the end for maximum plot convenience. I get why they did it in the story, and I get it kind of works, but I think it's just kind of like a little bit wasted. I feel like he could have been used a little bit more in the movies in general. And no cantankerous droid antics. He's not yelling at anyone and being profane. That's my favorite part of R2.
No, I think that's fair. And I mean, like one of the things recently I was reading about, because I haven't seen Solo, it's the idea that, when you don't mind wipe droids, they start to develop strong personalities and to an extent the argument of sentience.
That's interesting. That's something they Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Yeah, so she played that droid. I can't remember the name of that droid. But
L337.
That's it.
I think so.
Is that Leet? They call her Leet?
I think so.
What the fuck?
I might be wrong here, but
that's weird. That's interesting. Anyway, so that L337. So yeah, she was developing a personality because she was like hadn't had her mind wiped. Is that?
Yeah, I believe so.
There you go.
Yeah,
very
They
cool.
trap her.
And then they put her brain inside the Falcon.
Her whole thing was about like freeing droids, and they slaved and imprisoned her into the
And that's the
Falcon
moral of
forever.
the story. Don't ever rise up.
Yeah, don't ever rise against your
Yeah.
oppressors ever.
True. But yeah, I think that would be interesting to explore with someone like R2, the fact that, he's seen everything. He hasn't had his mind wiped. And
he's going nuts. He's
Yeah,
going
he's going
insane.
crazy.
He's going to start becoming a murder
starts
droid.
telling prophecies. But yeah. And although it's kind of a tangent, I do think the idea of droid rights in Star Wars is very fascinating to me. And it's interesting that I don't think that's really been explored with the exception of Solo.
I think it's
yeah.
super fascinating.
Yeah.
I think
Not
it's
for the films,
something
I
that's
reckon, but-
incredibly hard to entangle into feature films.
Exactly,
Like,
yeah.
It's kind of how would you incorporate that into a feature film? That feels like something that would be right at home in something like the Clone Wars and like
or like
episodes
stuff
Yeah,
like Clone Wars, and we
No,
got
I
like
agree.
one episode in like Mando season 3,
Yeah.
which was kind of interesting.
What is that in Mando season 3? That's when Doc Brown's in it, right? In that
Yeah.
episode,
Mhm.
and they've got the droids running around and
Christopher
they're
Lloyd,
doing
Jack
Yeah.
Black,
labor.
Lizzo.
Yes, yeah. I
And
haven't seen that
and there's
episode,
like a
but-
droid bar in there, they're
Yeah.
exploring those kind of ideas. I thought really poorly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really hate that episode of Mando.
I thought it was cool that they touched on it, and they show like those reprogrammed Clone Wars droids getting used in the way that
Yeah.
they were.
Yeah, and I guess to go on that idea about how would you do it in the films, I think it's mostly just how droids are looked upon. Because I mean, like even in the original trilogy, and it's such a heavy-handed allegory. It's the fact that droids aren't allowed in the bars and stuff like that.
It's like
And-
weird that he even brings it in because it's not a part of the story. At
Yeah.
all. It's just like a throwaway line. It's like they're not allowed in here.
But it's
And
like-
yeah, but it's meant to
It's a part of the world building.
exactly,
Yeah.
and it's meant to show that droids are a stand-in for certain oppressed groups and all that.
Yes.
Strangely enough, but they are meant to be. And I think, especially since the Empire's gone, a big contrast could be showing, just how droids are kind of treated with a bit more respect.
that could be cool.
And
Yeah.
I think it was even George Lucas who said you can tell the character of anyone in Star Wars by how they treat droids.
Interesting.
Yeah, which is
Interesting.
very clear with Lando.
So yeah. Oh yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
True. Lando's like in love.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
They make it work.
Yeah,
Mm.
they make it work. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And my question is, why bring that allegory and why bring that element of your story if you're not going to develop it or follow that further? If it is just a throwaway line, because what that tells you as like someone who is like watching the world building is that here's a part of the world where there's racism or like segregation in a sense against droids. Right, we get that. But if you're not addressing that, if you're not developing that or showing that people are trying to change it, then in a way you're kind of endorsing it. If it's just a part of your world, because as a writer, it's like, well, what is there change there? Is
I
there
don't
someone
think
trying to change that?
our heroes really approve of it.
Well,
Yeah.
they don't show any kind of addressing it at all.
Mm.
I think
I would.
it's one of those things. I think he's chucked in, and now we get to infer that we see like the calamity droids have
Yeah.
had
Like in the Clone Wars.
in the Clone Wars, and the idea
Mm.
of the very concept of the Clone Wars is something that existed, not to the full extent that it is now, but like Clone Wars gets name dropped in Episode 4.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
he had this was an event that happened in his brain, and we get to infer now that's like, oh, there's like a great sort of like distrust in like where people's heads are, especially in like the case of droids.
Yeah, and I'd also like to counter that by saying like the idea that just small lines like that and small concepts, they make the world feel a lot more lived in.
Okay.
And like in Episode 4, you really, from the get-go, you really start to feel that, oh yeah, this is a world with so much history. And on the second note, I think it's also there to kind of just build like how wrong the galaxy currently is.
Okay.
And it kind of serves to add more power and emphasis to why the Rebel Alliance is needed. And you kind of get this implication that with how droids are implemented into the Alliance through R2-D2 and C-3PO, that they kind of do get to be treated with a bit more respect by the end.
Okay, so if we in our sequels, have it be that droids are a little bit more commonplace and people respect them and treat them with respect, it might just by kind of osmosis show that kind of trajectory and that change over time. Okay.
Yeah, it's more of a subtle thing.
Din Djarin eat your heart out.
I mean, he had that growth. He was like, I hate droids, and then by the end of the show, he loves droids. He watches them all the time.
No Lando though.
No Lando. He doesn't love him that much yet.
He'll get there.
He'll get there. Everyone gets there eventually. The second they meet L337, they're like, oh damn, I'm down bad.
I think where I was going with that bit before, the comedy of droids, because of like how outlandish they are, you have that simplicity, you have that freedom to make more like slapstick kind of humor, more like childish humor, and bring that into like the world. And I feel like that's like a nice core that like C-3PO and R2 always brought to the sequels and the prequels of like this childish element.
You mean the originals in the prequels?
Sorry, yes, the originals and the prequels. Bringing in this childish element and making it feel like cuter, more humble place. Especially like in Return of the Jedi, C-3PO is just recounting the first like A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back to the Ewoks.
What do we feel like of that moment? Do you like that moment?
I actually do love that moment.
Okay.
I think it's incredibly wholesome. I think it's so funny.
It's very cute. I still hate
I love how he's making the noises as well.
The noises are pretty cool. Some like D&D shit. It's like recounting exact noises and stuff. It's pretty cool.
It's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying. Very, very like childish, warm. Like they really bring the family adventure to to the Star Wars kind of story. I get what you're saying.
How they designed BB-8 is almost intentionally built for that purpose.
He's so cute. It's such a great design.
Yeah, he looks awesome.
You know what's not a great design? Dio. Fucking hate that droid.
Yeah, no, I agree.
That's my next point on things I don't like about the sequels is Dio sucks.
But yeah, I'll hats off to Disney for one thing, and that's like I think like BB-8, good design.
Solid
design.
You
wanted to make a new droid, and it's a good new droid.
Yeah, one of the most distinct memories I have from when Force Awakens came out is I was like in this group chat with like all these people, and they hated Force Awakens like right out of the gate.
Wild.
I know, yeah, and I was like, oh, it was cool. Look at BB-8, and they're like, BB-8, oh, ridiculous how they use CGI. It's a design that's impractical. And I was like, no, that's practical. And
it's a legit droid.
Yeah, and I even like there was a whole website they put up actually explaining
the
whole
so
blueprints and everything, and yeah, just seeing how they actually made BB-8 like.
It's not practical for the entire movie.
Yeah.
That being said. But like,
it's plausible.
They made a functional thing with like gyroscopics in it so that it could actually run, and it's very cool. Yeah.
Very, very cool stuff.
Yeah.
We've got our next part. We're going to talk about fixed pitches and stuff we would do different with droids and stuff. But I think it might be worth having just a conversation of droids and how we see them fitting into the story. And like you already talked, Sandro, about how they really capture that like childhood magic kind of part of the story. But aside from that, I'm very strong on the idea that I don't like goobers, as they're called in Spider-Verse. I think they're often very lazy way of like writing a story. So it's like, oh, you have to get this map to Luke Skywalker has to get across the galaxy to Leia so that she can find Luke. That's not.
Oh, that's silly. Like that.
Not really the making of a great story.
They don't need to play a part in the story like that.
But then, you go back to A New Hope, and it's all about R2 getting that message to Obi-Wan. It's like the start of that story.
Yeah, but is that a goober, or is that just like, that's the call to action?
Well, it's a MacGuffin.
Yeah, it's kind of a MacGuffin, like getting that message.
It's like, I consider the goober situation like, oh, R2's had the second part of the map in him the whole time. Whoop-de-fucking-do.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, R2 having, like, this message that we also get seen given to him at the start of the movie. So we're sort of, like, he's more of a character before Luke is a character.
Yeah.
Because we see Leia give the message to R2. So it's not just sort of something that just comes up and just existed out of nowhere. It's something that we sort of followed the story of.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So R2 is a character, he gets given this message, and then within the first act of the film, he delivers that message.
Yeah.
And he no longer is playing the role of, the message bearer. And the difference there, I guess, with BB-8 is that he gets that message at the start, and it's them following the droid. It's like, get the droid, because they're trying to get that information for a significant portion of the film. And only at the very end does it kind of come back into play when R2 and he join like the two maps, and they're like, oh, Luke Skywalker, cool. Yeah, no, that's a good distinction. I think that's a good, like, clear distinction between those two examples. What other roles do the droids kind of play in the movies? I'm just thinking. In terms of, like, carrying plot forward and the carrying plot elements,
Like,
R2's introduced in, like, a really funny fight in the prequels in Phantom Menace. It's like, oh, this droid saved us, and they give him a fucking do a little
oh
ceremony
yeah,
for him and shit.
he's the one droid that could get the job
Yeah,
done.
all the other 4 droids
Yeah.
fucking died, and he's the sole survivor of the fight.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not sure.
He's a hero. He's a war hero.
He is.
Don't get it wrong.
He is. In fact, the sequels should be about just R2.
Oh yeah,
I'd say, yeah.
R2 more than anyone deserved one of those medals at the end
Exactly.
of the movie.
Yeah, let's retcon that.
Yeah.
it's R2 and Chewie.
Yeah.
C-3PO standing there like, I should get a fucking medal.
It's a hard question for me because, to be perfectly honest, I don't know if the droids have ever really appealed to me personally. And like, that's one thing that's always fascinated me because a lot of people do really love the droid characters, and I think
Yeah.
you guys do especially.
They're lovely
Some of them,
characters, but they are side characters. I don't
Yeah.
think they are integral to plot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they should be the focus really. And
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I kind of would like to see R2 and C-3PO kind of just go to the sides in the sequels. Maybe R2 closer with Luke. I mean,
Yeah.
because that should be how it happens.
It makes sense. Like, it
I
makes
know.
sense that R2 is with Luke. At the
Yeah,
start.
yeah.
We actually have a different pitch for what R2 should be doing.
I'm interested.
Okay.
So yeah, fixed pitches.
Go for it.
R2 should be friends with Ben Solo and be his personal droid companion. So I've been for a while imagining Ben Solo is training with Luke at the Jedi Temple with the younglings, and Ben is the oldest of his Padawans, and obviously R2's there and like helping them and acting as like a droid, so he's like a little droid helper at the temple, right? With that, Ben Solo's growing up around this droid, so it makes sense he would be like, oh, it's like my cool droid friend that I hang out with all the time.
Yeah.
And slowly over time, he kind of, takes ownership almost of R2D2, and R2D2 becomes like his droid companion on his journey, and as he explores and stuff.
Yeah.
And Luke doesn't really need R2 anymore.
I think that's cool. I think he's still like close by enough to Luke. for
Yeah,
me
no,
to, like,
absolutely.
be
Yeah.
happy with that.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's not there with him. He's
Yeah.
just like, I don't need this iPad. Here, you can.
I don't
have-
need this
Yeah.
car.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
something,
I don't need this
But-
car. You can have this car.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way I kind of see that though is it's almost like, hey, this was my father's droid.
Yeah.
It was my droid, and it's time to hand this down
Yeah,
to
it's
you,
almost
the
like a
next
legacy
generation.
thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and
And
I
the-
think that's like a wonderful thing. And
Yeah, no, I've been imagining that for a while.
This,
Yeah.
this droid has seen everything.
And yeah, this droid is like,
yes, and he's ready
ancient.
for your next genocide.
I don't think we should address that R2 has seen everything.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to come up, except for maybe like one really dark joke
Yeah.
at some point. I think could be really funny, and if you know, you know. But if you don't, it's just a moment. It's like you don't even notice.
Yes, he shows the recording of the younglings being slaughtered.
No.
At the dinner table. There's Anakin doing a backspin.
Oh my fucking god.
I've got one line in my first draft treatment where Luke is kind of not chastising Ben, but just saying like, hey, maybe like cool off a little bit. Don't be so eager to rush out into the galaxy and fight stuff. That's how I lost my hand. And he puts up his robot hand. And he's like, that's a lesson that can come at a steep cost. And he holds up his hand. And R2D2, as they're walking out of that room, he's like, that's not how you lost your hand. And Luke's like, you weren't even there. What are you talking about? And they're like bickering back and forth. And he's like, I don't even know where you were when that happened. Like, because I couldn't remember where R2D2 was in that scene. So I just like didn't write it in.
That's a
Well,
phenomenal
in the
question.
Lego Star Wars games, he's there with Luke.
When he gets his head cut off.
Oh my
That's so
fucking
funny.
God.
Because that's the second
So
character that you switch between in
'Cause
the
it's
level.
him- Yeah, well, here's my question. So it's R2 and Luke, and they fly away from Dagobah.
Yeah.
And then the next time you see Luke, he's walking through,
Yeah.
and it's just him and Darth Vader. R2D2 vanishes. I assume he's
R2
just with the
No,
the
R2
X-Wing.
finds the rest of the gang.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
He finds the rest of the gang because then
Yeah.
he helps them escape
Right,
Cloud
right.
City.
Right.
But yeah, shit. Like, when does he split off?
Exactly. Well, we don't get a scene for that, so it's funny that Luke would be like, yeah, what are you... Yeah. Where were you?
There's that one part where he's walking through Bespin, and do you know the thing that I'm talking about, where like it's like that weird backroom scene where he's just walking through like the hallways in Cloud
It's
City,
just R2.
and then
he's
he
like,
see
Oh, Luke.
Luke,
Okay.
and then he sees like some stormtroopers coming around, but then he sees like Leia start shouting his name, and there's like a very small interaction where Leia's like, "It's a trap! It's a trap!"
Oh,
and then-
yeah, that's
Mm.
right.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, does he split off from him there?
I don't even remember
maybe?
R2 being in that scene. So I don't know.
Yeah,
It waddles off.
we gotta go watch that now. Holy
Get
shit.
an R2 spin-off just set during then.
But yeah,
It's a
that's
side
my-
adventure. It's DLC.
That's my note for R2D2. I don't really have a whole lot of other notes. I think BB-8's just like a cool companion to Poe.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting, like trying to fit R2D2 and BB-8 into the same story because they kind of do take. similar
Yeah,
roles.
they take up the exact same kind of plot space, so
Yeah.
it's tricky. But in my mind, it's like one's for Ben Solo,
Yeah.
one's for Poe, and then
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I suppose it would be cool to see how R2 as a character fits into Ben's story because I like that because I mean, R2's seen a Jedi fall before. How does R2 respond?
Hey,
to
that's
them?
really interesting. He's kind of walked down
Yeah.
this road before he's seen a Jedi.
He's
go
seen
down
it,
this road.
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
There's a scene in Last Jedi where he convinces Luke to go after and like teach Rey and not lose faith in Ben.
Yeah.
Which is silly. But
No, I agree with you. It's silly.
like the premise of that is silly.
Yeah.
But the scene itself is cool.
And the
where
way he pulls up the old footage.
yeah.
It's pretty. It hits
R2
me.
like plays the recording of Leia asking Obi-Wan for help
Yeah.
in front of Luke, and it's very cute. It's very heartwarming. And I feel like you could do something very similar to that.
You probably, almost
Yeah.
definitely you could. And do it with Ben Solo instead, is what you're saying? Or
I think still do it with Luke.
Okay.
Like it's still a moment of Luke, like R2 is teaching Luke.
yeah. No, that's cool. I like that. No, we always come back to this. I am a big fan of The Last Jedi. Not because I think it's a good movie, but I think it's incredibly entertaining, and there are some very great moments within the film. I love, as much as it kind of breaks the world, I love the Force lightning from Yoda. I love the Yoda moment. The Yoda scene in general is amazing. I love the Diet and the Force stuff and the connection across the galaxy. It's amazing. I love all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that moment as well. I
a good
I
moment.
forgot that was in The Last Jedi, but yeah,
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I can't remember if it's a deleted scene or not.
No,
the
it's in
Yoda
there. It's
scene?
in there.
Yoda scene's in it.
No, the Leia when R2 pops up the recording from Leia because he's like, I'm not going to Crate. I'm not going to go fight and do all this. Like, I'm not going to be a hero. And then R2 shows that clip
changes
of Leia. It's really it's a good moment.
Well, sorry, I'm just thinking because I disagree about Yoda. I don't like Yoda's involvement in it.
So we've talked about this before, and I was very much in the defense of Yoda summoning the lightning.
Yeah.
And Yoda returning as a
I
Force
like
ghost.
Yoda's lesson. I'm not for the lightning. Like the Force ghosts get to like summon.
Okay, yeah. On that point, I don't think Force ghosts should have crazy powers like that. But
It's not even crazy power. It's just there's already a storm.
Wrath of God.
I know this is kind of a tangent away from droids, but my contention with that scene is I feel like Yoda's portrayed as he is introduced in episode 5.
Yeah.
Because he's like very aloof and like goblinoid and
Yeah,
all
it's
that.
brilliant. It's best
But
Yoda.
that's not what Yoda's like, because that personality he adopted at the start of episode 5 is an act. Yeah, and that's kind of how he's like portrayed in episode 8.
I don't see it like that. I see it more as just the way he's acting in episode 5 is like he's not trying to teach him a lesson by acting that way.
Yeah.
He's just acting like fucking insane. Like he's on crack. Like I love crack to Yoda.
Well,
of just like smacking the smacking
Smacking
my mic.
Smacking your microphone.
Like he's smacking the shit out of R2 and like fighting him over like a fucking portion.
Yeah.
Like it's
well,
so funny.
I love that as well, but I do think that is a lesson he's trying to teach Luke.
Okay.
Because it's the whole appearances can be deceiving, you know. Where is this great warrior? Oh, who's this annoying little guy who
It's a bit
am
of a
starting
lesson
to
in
get
like
angry at?
patience and whatnot.
Exactly, yeah. And it's the fact
And
that Luke...
accepting wisdom in places you might be not ready to.
Yeah.
experience it, yeah.
And the fact that Luke doesn't even consider that he could possibly be this great teacher.
Yeah.
So,
But then we get to the point where he like cracks down into Yoda mode, but he's like super stern. I
Yeah.
like how he comes in Last Jedi. Aren't we talking about fucking droids?
I know.
Yeah,
well,
let's become a Yoda episode.
I do like how he
Yoda
comes
time.
in Last Jedi, just because I feel like it's still like old mentor wisdom, and it still feels like Yoda to me. Probably
Yeah.
because it's Frank Oz, and Frank Oz doing.
That's true,
so
that's
good.
true. And it's good to see Yoda. And it's a puppet. So
It's a
Yeah,
puppet.
Puppets real, dude.
Anyway, droid.
Back to
Yes.
droids. What other notes have we got to talk about droids? What do we got?
First Order. What kind of
Ooh,
droids
First
they
Order
got?
droids. So they've got the little the black BB-8 like roller ball droids, and that's it. I think I can't remember any other droids really popping up much in the sequels.
Yeah, right. So do we think they should have droids? Like, what purposes would they have droids? Do you think they'd have droids very similar to how the Empire would have had droids?
Yeah, interesting question. So I really love the K2 droids from like
They're
Jedi
scary.
Survivor
Yeah.
and from Rogue One. They're just a really, really cool design, and they're terrifying.
They're terrifying.
The one in
absolutely.
Andor that picks him up and like chokes him and stuff.
Fuck me,
That's
yeah.
that's a
Yeah,
scene,
yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest, though. I don't think the First Order should have droids.
Okay.
Because on one hand, I think, firstly, depending on how you approach them, I don't think they should have the resources to
I
have
agree.
so many droids. And secondly, I think it kind of paints this picture of superiority and all that if they refuse to even work with droids. And I think that's the path you should go down with the First Order.
Interesting.
I can see them not having droids in the first one because they're still that small faction.
Yeah, maybe
after they
yeah.
have a bit more military backing and like financial backing from the New Republic at the end of the first one, maybe they could like introduce like some droids, but like nothing crazy. I do think it would be funny that they would introduce droids and they would become maybe a bit more pompous as time goes on.
Yeah.
As like it's like a sign of hypocrisy.
Yeah, yeah.
their whole real mission was just to accumulate power the whole time. And
Yeah.
if everything is just a facade,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
kind of watching that facade break through how they approach certain things,
Mm.
and one of which would be like their implementation of droids, maybe.
Ah,
Yeah.
interesting.
And if I could build on that as well, I think going back to that idea of how people treat droids, what if, the New Republic and all the characters, they treat droids nicely, but the First Order always, like, looks down on them when they work with them. So it's
yeah.
like you get this very, like, off-kilted, like, oh, these are bad people.
Yeah, well, like, I feel like you always got the sense that the mouse droids never wanted to fucking be there, right?
Yeah.
like
They
what
were-
were those things?
If they found a way to escape the Death Star, they would.
They
Yeah.
would, right?
Yeah. More gonk droids, though.
Oh, always more gonk.
More
droids.
gonk droids.
Gonk droids, I think, need to be in the scrap city, or
Fuck, you're totally right.
like gonk droids need to be all around,
Dude, absolutely.
maybe even like somewhere in Jakku, there's just Gonk Town.
Gonk Town.
Gonk Town.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
in my treatment, I've got like this big scrap city. I call it Grease's Crown, I think.
Yeah.
And it's just this huge like scrap city built from the wreckage of like Imperial Star Destroyers and Luca Hulks and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the perfect place to put a fuckload of Gonk
Gonk
droids.
Town.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Welcome to Gonk Town, baby.
If I could,
Fan
sorry to
favorite droid.
sorry to take this a little bit away, but with droids, I mean, I think it could be cool as well if we see some sort of independent droids, like just droids who don't have masters, Because think about it like this, right? When the Empire fell and the New Republic had to forge their way and build a new government, there probably wouldn't have been many people who are able to wipe droids' minds anymore. So you'd probably see
interesting.
droids now have the time to build these
Go
identities.
batshit
Hmm.
crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And
They know too much. They have too many memories.
yeah,
And there's droid pubs.
exactly,
like in Man.
yeah. So it could be really cool to, I don't know, have maybe like a supporting character at one point who's literally just a droid who has their own life.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And
That
that
could be
could-
cool.
Be a very interesting new era.
You know what? You say that. The trailer for the new Star Wars game that's coming out, Jedi Outlaws, I think is what it's called.
Mm.
It featured a spy droid from the Separatist
Oh,
army.
they have a commander
droid. That's it. Yeah.
Ah, yeah.
But
And
it's like
he's
a-
talking. He has dialogue. He's a person with like
Yeah.
a character and
It's
stuff.
like a completely sentient commando droid. It seems
Oh,
really
that's
cool. I'm
cool.
very
Yeah.
and he's
interested to
wearing
see where
a
they go
trench
with
coat, and he looks fucking
so
sick.
gnarly.
it. It does look wild.
So we're very, very excited for that game. But
Yeah,
we're big gamer nerds here.
Yeah.
And so that character is really interesting too, because he's obviously like a commando droid who has been
Yeah,
around
yeah.
since the Clone Wars and is now all the way into, I think it's between episode 5 and 6. They've set that game,
Oh,
is what
okay.
they've said.
Oh, that's
which is
cool.
a really interesting
really
period
cool.
because the rebellion's got the Empire on the back foot.
Yeah.
So the Empire's thrown out crazy swings here and there. The rebellion's thrown out crazy swings.
Yeah.
And it's all coming to a head.
It's like a huge time gap as well.
It's a pretty big. Was
Yeah.
it 3 years or something?
it's a
pretty big.
3-year time
Yeah.
gap. Yeah.
So yeah, really interesting time period and a really interesting place to put a sentient kind of robot character. So
Yeah, that's
very
so
curious
cool.
to see what those guys do with that story and
Yeah.
that character.
Yeah, because I think what's really interesting as well with like the droids from the prequels, after episode 2, they enabled their personalities because it meant that I think it was the resources or the computational
It was
stuff needed.
There was a few things. I know that I'm pretty sure they canonized this, that they needed them to be fully operational without the
Yeah, like-
operation of a Luca Hulk
Yeah,
being like the
independently.
hive mind. So
Yeah.
they needed to have independent thought. And secondly, they needed to be like a bit more friendly because it was very like jarring for people on the separatist side
Yeah.
who had their not planets occupied, but like the separatists were like how clones were like stationed on
Mm.
Republic planets. Battle droids were stationed on separatist planets.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they needed them to seem like a bit more friendly
Ah,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
the general like
Yeah.
public of the separatist
Yeah.
alliance.
Gotcha.
So they gave them a bit more of that
Yeah,
personality
yeah.
as well.
Interesting.
But
Very
yeah,
cool.
see, that's what's so interesting to me, because it's this implication that, most droids who don't have personalities, they can. And whether or not free thought is consciousness, like, are they sentient?
What is the
Yeah.
level of AI?
Exactly.
We're
but
gonna
that,
have a
that is going back to the
B1
droids.
battle droid in the sequel trilogy be like, what am I?
What have
What
I
is my
done?
purpose? You
What-
passed the butter. Oh,
Oh
my
my
god.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I
I
don't know.
reference that way too much.
Yeah.
I love that
Well,
moment,
it's
though.
perfect. for
It's
this.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's what fascinates me about droids. It's just like, I feel like there's so many implications that when you start questioning, it can create such cool, like, fantastical
Yeah.
new things.
Just kind of veering away from that because my one note that I
Yes.
wanted to bring up before the end of the show is something that Mello kind of introduced this idea to us of like having a speaker droid or a droid who is the fulcrum around which the Senate operates.
Yeah,
in
the
New Republic.
mediator droid.
Yes, I think it's brilliant. I think it's great.
yes,
I really
think
like.
it's so cool.
I sort of took his idea and went a little bit of a different direction with it. I have the Senate set up like Zoom call meeting rooms.
Yeah.
That's how I set up the High Republic. And so in these,
I hate it.
Shut up. Listen first. So it's the separate rooms, and you have like a circle table, sort of like the UN table, but it's small enough that it's one party in this council room.
Right.
And they have the display, and on the wall you can see all the other council rooms set up, and you can see who's speaking, and it is mediated. In each room there is a speaker droid who pops up in the middle of the table, and it's this is who's speaking now. You can press a button and retort and interrupt a debate if you want to call out like libel or blasphemy. What's the word for like defamation? Yeah, stuff like that. You can call out and retort and
so
argue,
like,
and if you're in the middle of a debate, you can do that. But it's mediated by droids.
Yeah, so it's like the Speaker of the House.
Yeah, if you retort too much, you'll get like kicked out of the council and stuff like that.
If I may interject, I think that's cool.
Okay.
I'd like to go a step above. I'm not quite sure about the Zoom call thing, but I like how everybody gets that one speaker droid.
I'll explain why in a second, but I'll let you finish your point. Yeah.
But I think it'd be cool if the speaker droid was like a hive mind.
Okay.
So it's technically like
it's like the same.
They all have
speaker
like
droid.
a bunch of speaker droids, but it's the same.
Interesting.
Same speaker droid. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And that's how he like is completely like monitoring.
Yeah.
And, like controlling
So-
everybody.
My perspective on this setup was that I really wanted to do something that is very visually distinct from the Senate in the Old Republic, in the High Republic.
Yeah.
Because it's this huge room, and it is physically destroyed by Palpatine and Yoda in their epic battle at the end of Revenge of the Sith.
It's very iconic.
And it's a very iconic fight, and the symbolism of that fight, of Palpatine literally using these chairs and destroying the room with itself, is...
And then I threw the Senate at him.
Because he is the Senate.
Yeah.
is a very good example of George Lucas's Shakespearean writing style
Yes.
and how he wanted it to be such this epic conclusion of the story, and I feel like it really works there. And I really wanted to, in creating a new kind of Senate-style room, because we never see what it looks like in the original trilogy.
Yeah.
And that ended up working really well, I think. Because what would it have looked like? It would have looked very similar to the High Republic one, and I think doing that would have taken away from that moment.
I agree.
So in creating a new democracy and a new style of government, I wanted to really create something that was very different from what we see in the High Republic, and that's why I ended up going with Zoom rooms and like small little meeting rooms that are separate from each other and are mediated by this speaker droids.
I guess my because I remember I was reading Mello's treatment, and I'm like, oh, that's a cool idea. My only question is, I wonder how it like got to that. Like, who said, hey, let's do this, and who agreed to it?
And it seems to me like in the interest of trying to create a fair, equal system, you would use droids who can be impartial.
Exactly, yeah, because I mean, like, one of the problems with...
They hack the droids.
That's an interesting plot. That's a plot device.
They bribe the mediator droid.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's really fascinating because it does solve, the age-old question with politics. It's the fact that the speakers of the House are always people from a party.
Yeah.
And they have their allegiances.
How can you not have bias as a human being,
Yeah, but it's interesting to see what problems that could cause as well.
Well, like Sandro just said, you could have someone hack into it, or you can have the whole Senate wiped out by an EMP, and then they can't do stuff.
Or maybe it starts to form its own opinions.
Or it becomes sentient in a way, and it becomes to have its own bias.
4chan's like feeding it like misinformation, and it just starts like spouting like the most.
It's like, I like the First Order now.
Like a DDoS attack.
Yeah.
like people just overloading it with these horrible opinions.
Yeah.
It's Hey AI.
Yeah. It's like Hey AI. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very funny. No, I like that.
Yeah.
So that's the idea for speaker droids. And I think
that.
there was something else I wanted to bring up as well. I was just kind of a general question of talking about the First Order. As the army develops and stuff, it'd be really interesting to see if they do eventually take on more droids in there.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting because, I mean, why would you give up the lives of people, right?
Yeah, if
when
you
you
did
have
have to,
droids?
You have your funding's always a big thing.
Yeah.
And we just talked about funding when it comes to producing battle droids. I think their military should mainly stay people. And I think that's something that the Empire used as a way of selling. Look how many dedicated troops we have to our cause.
Look how many people believe in what we're saying.
Yeah.
It would be... Sorry if I've interrupted you, but I think it would also be interesting, right? Because what if, the New Republic, they want to be demilitarized. They don't want people in the military. What if they are like, well, we're going to take this cost to keep people out of war, and we're going to have peacekeeper droids.
That's interesting.
We know that Coruscant during High Republic time still had like droid officers, like droid police officers, I'm pretty sure. And we're led to believe that droids like do
Oh my god. You fucking idiot.
He started laughing. And I'm like,
It's not funny. It's not funny, Sandro.
it's not funny. This is serious business.
This is serious.
This is a serious podcast, guys. Get
Yeah,
your head in the game.
Jesus.
We know that we can like freely assume that droids do take up like a lot of roles. Like we see like taxi driver droids, and we see like a lot of other stuff. And I feel like with Star Wars, I think in the back of a lot of viewers' minds is like when they ask like who's doing this job, they probably just auto fill in probably a droid.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I did when I wrote the treatment. There's a couple of like just droid taxi drivers. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
That's
that
my
makes
point.
sense.
Yeah.
That's my point.
How would the First Order include droids with a boost of funding? I would imagine maybe they'd use them on like gunships. Maybe like what if droids are running like the cannons on like ships and whatnot and making those more technical decisions?
Yeah.
Kind of makes sense.
I think, yeah, that's kind of my final point before we kind of close out the show is that I feel like using droids to visually show the change of the First Order, and
Yeah.
we want to show them getting bigger and progressing and evolving. And I think a good way to show that would be to maybe do an influx of droids and an increase in their use.
Yeah.
Just to kind of like show, oh, they're getting bigger, they're getting more serious, they're getting more like keen to fight people and be like a serious threat.
We can also just show this in like their general armaments as well, like what weapons they choose to use.
True, but I feel like droid it's a bit more clear because you can show like,
absolutely.
big gun different to other big gun is a bit it's less visually like distinct, I guess. Is my only point.
Yeah.
Got my final point. You guys got anything you want to close out the show with? Some more droid
I guess-
facts?
Yeah, droid fact. Fun droid fact. No, I don't know. Like that's the thing. I'm not much of a lore expert when it comes to droids and all that. I think they're kind of interesting. It's never been the appeal to me about Star Wars, but I like asking those questions about the world building of it because I think on one hand, world building kind of reflects the themes of the world and the story. And when you see these changes between the eras and how the galaxy evolves, it creates more distinctive imagery. Like that's kind of a side tangent, but one of my problems with the sequels, is if you've ever played Battlefront 2, you know that the sequel era kind of is just the original trilogy era. It
Just from the way it
sleeker.
looks.
Yeah, exactly. And I
Yeah.
remember Kai, my bandmate, for anyone watching, he used to be like, oh, the First Order Resistance, that's cool. And then when we played Battlefront 2, he finally understood why it's like the exact same.
Yep.
Just sleeker. And I think that's what I want to see, a new era. Like
you really want to see something that like
something new, like
something new, something very different.
distinct.
I brought this up in like our First Order topic of like they should have different armor.
I agree.
Like,
yeah.
let's not do white stormtrooper armor. It also makes no sense if they're trying to pitch themselves. In
Yeah,
the galaxy
yes,
of, like,
exactly.
For sure. That's definitely like a distinction. I think we should.
I
Land
know
on.
Merlo made that change in his treatment in the first bit that I read. He's got them wearing like gray like suits of some kind, like gray armor.
Interesting.
And it seemed like a lot more material as opposed to like plastic or the space plastic that they used to make the clone trooper armor. Oh, the stormtrooper.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Armor's good. You need armor to an extent, I think.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah,
Especially
something-
if they're troops.
Something we can keep
Some-
tinkering with
some
for
sort
sure.
of
Don't put them in Jedi robes.
Yeah.
Oh, poor man's not even here to defend himself. But we'll be talking a lot more about that later on.
Yeah.
And I think, we'll close out the show there. Thank you so much for listening. This has been Fixing the Sequel Trilogy. Follow us on everything. We're on social media. We're going to be posting on TikTok and YouTube Shorts very soon, so look out for that. Give us 5 stars on Spotify, all the good stuff. And until next time, may the Force be with you.